Welcome to the first STARFALLER Grim Shadows interview. My name is Rose, and I would like to introduce a new rising star in the fields of dark fantasy and grim-dark literature. His breakthrough novel STARFALLER has gotten fantastic reviews. I would like to welcome R.C. Rucker, the creator of the Grim Shadows universe, and author of the hit novel STARFALLER Shadowborn.
Hello, Rose. It was a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yes, thank you. What first compelled you to write STARFALLER Shadowborn?
Great question. Well, I've always been drawn to aesthetic darkness since I can remember. What I mean by aesthetic darkness is beauty in things seen as dark and mysterious. I've always had a great passion for dark stories from way back in my childhood. It didn't matter if it was a dark movie, book, or music, all had a positive impact on my growth and development. When I was young, I was one of the only black kids to go to goth industrial clubs in New York City. Clubs like the Bank and the Batcave were places I used to call home every weekend. I was known well enough that I could get into the clubs for free most nights. I miss those nights. I was also heavily inspired by stories of vampires and werewolves. My favorite fantasy character is a character named Cain, whom I consider to be the greatest fantasy character ever created, by author Carl Edward Wagner. And the Michael Moorcock Elric series is also a favorite of mine. I was never a fan of the bright, shiny hero who always saved the day, with no real sense of consequences to their actions and motivations. STARFALLER in the Grim Shadows universe comes out of those years and my own inner darkness. I like people who have been through things. I like scars. I do not trust people who have walked through life without any real challenges or setbacks. You never know if they can take a beating from life and get back up.
I see. Wow, it seems you had a very unique childhood. You've described the Grim Shadows universe as spanning multiple eras: fantasy, cyberpunk, and far future science fiction. Where does STARFALLER fit within that grand design?
It is a reader's first step into the darkness of the first era of the GSU, the Grim Shadows universe. The first era is set on the world of Tanalon. It is a grim, dark world fantasy setting. STARFALLER tells the story of the rise of STARFALLER, a mysterious elf assassin. The novel shows his various adventures, his victories and defeats, and the price he and the Grim Shadows must pay. The novel shows in the world of Tanalon, there is always a price one must pay. Win or lose, you will pay a price. In the novel, they go to war with a criminal organization called the Silver Veils, only to find out that there is darker powers at play. The cult of a forgotten cosmic horror has risen in their home city of Arcist. He has to deal with all of this, as well as his own lust for power, and the price he will pay to gain that power. If he's not careful, he will lose his soul to an artifact as old as the world, the Eye of Shadows. STARFALLER, it is a foundational book in the Era 1 GSU.
Let's talk about STARFALLER himself. Who is he at his core?
STARFALLER is a driven elf. He tries to hide his lust for power from most people. He likes to see himself as a capable elf who can deal with any issue that arises. While this is true, it also is but a mask he puts on for others to see. He desires power, the power of control. You see, this is one of his major motivations: control. He desires to control his own life. Having grown up in this strict life or death organization, he values control. He has a love-hate relationship with the Grim Shadows. He's now their leader, but he is now controlled by them more than ever. He resents their control over his life, but he would also die for them if he had to. And he is fully aware of this contradiction, and it fuels his lust for more. He will now have to deal with a bigger issue than just his organization's control over him. His lust for power has caused him to make a deal with a very ancient devil, the Eye of Shadows, a sentient artifact who knows only hunger. It does not care about his wants, his desires, his loves, or his hates. It hungers, and he will feed it. Now Starfaller must try to find a way to escape the growing influence and control the Eye has over him. The greater he strives to be free, the more chains he puts on himself. Will he ever be free? Only time will tell.
What is a Shadowborn? What does this mean in the GSU?
Shadowborn are a nightmare race of wild elves who are from a different plane called the Shadow Realms. It is a realm of eternal night, darkness, and gloom. The Shadowborn live on this plane with other nightmare creatures. Not much is known about them. Many on Tantalon think they're a myth, a boogeyman made to scare children. But they are very real and very deadly. They have coal black skin and silver glowing eyes, just like Starfaller. They can form shadow weapons out of their hands and shadow step into and out of dark areas, just like Starfaller. There is one huge difference. They are cursed to live in the nightmare plane known as the Shadow Realms. Even if they leave it, they will always be drawn back to it, most likely due to their death. Starfaller has never felt that pull. They can't stay long in the mortal realms because the longer they stay here, the more they feel a sense of growing discomfort and pain. Starfaller has never felt this pain. Most people think that Starfaller is Tyrant-born, a dark elf from the underground empire of the Dark Elves. But some whisper that he is a Shadowborn. But they can't explain how he can stay in the mortal realms. If you ever meet a Shadowborn hunter, run.
What was the hardest part for you in writing Starfaller and why?
You got some great questions. I would say getting the horror down right. While there are many people who can write a fantasy novel, I find that very few can write true dark fantasy or true grim dark and get it right. It is not an easy thing to do. Some go for cheap thrills or scares, and for others, it's just about body count and gore. I don't write like that. Everything is done in a realistic way, cause and effect, action and reaction, and most importantly, motivation. Why is the character acting this way or taking this action? Writing horror and mixing it with a fantasy world is not easy. Usually you get too much of one and not enough of the other. With Starfaller Shadowborn, it's 50-50. I believe it is a perfect mix of the two.
Readers have described the book as cinematic and philosophical. Did you imagine it visually while writing, as if it were unfolding on screen?
I have always been a visual person. This is one reason why my favorite rappers are Vinnie Paz and the Wu-Tang Clan. They use words to paint a picture that one could see visually, and I love that. A lot of the new hippity-hoppity artists these days just can't do that. But to answer your question directly, yes. I think in terms of how it would look, not from the perspective of a movie or a TV show or anything like that, but more like if it was happening right in front of me. When I write, I want the reader to smell the blood, to hear the screams, to enjoy the victory. I hate flowery language, and I'm all about direct, grounded language in my writing.
I noticed you have multiple novels set in the first era of the GSU. How many novels do you currently have in the first era setting of the GSU? Is STARFALLER your only protagonist?
I have 2 full novels and a novel of short stories. They are Starfaller Shadowborn, The Chronicles of Cain, and Arcist in Shadows. I'm working on a new one based off a character named Bloodraven. There will be more coming soon for each of the eras. No, Starfaller is not my only protagonist. I have various main characters who will get their own novels, like Titan Starax, the Dwarf Lord, and others. Cain is a very interesting but different character from Starfaller. Each has their place in the GSU. Sorrowblade and Blade's Fool, the 2 Dark Elves in the novels, might also get their own novel. We'll see.
I also noticed you have characters from one novel show up in other novels. In fact, STARFALLER shows up in all 3 books. Why did you do that? Was this the plan from the beginning?
Glad you asked that question and that you noticed. It was the plan from the beginning. The entire point of the GSU is to create a dark world that is lived in by various characters. Each novel tells a part of the whole story. For instance, in Starfaller Shadowborn, when the former leader of the Grim Shadows, Malric, also called Old Knife, was killed, it was done off stage. It was only discussed. We didn't get to see it. But the reader gets to see what happened and how in my collection of short stories, Arcist in Shadows. My worlds are living things where famous and powerful people will run into each other as either allies or enemies or just there. In my books, they don't get plot armor. So if 2 so-called heroes run into each other, one might not make it out alive. It's just the way it goes.
How are you able to write on 3 different types of fiction settings to such a high level of lore and detail in such a short period of time? With some creators, it takes them years to develop their worlds and characters. You have been an author for less than a year, and the level of your writing, detail, and world building is truly astounding.
This thing I do is weird even to me. I feel almost possessed when I'm writing scene by scene. My ideas come fast, and I struggle to write them all down. It is almost as if I'm tapping into something that has already been made and done. It is as if I'm a tool in a process of this work manifesting in our world. I've had people ask me, where do you get this idea? Where'd you get that idea? And sometimes I don't really have an answer. What I can tell you is when I write characters, I write them as if they were truly alive and conscious, and not just filling a page till they die. I'm only just beginning in all this too, so that's something to keep in mind. It's weird because it's like I'm peeking into a library of written books, and I can only take a few out at a time, and I'm writing notes and trying to put together what's in this library. And I'm not sure if this library is in my head or if it's from somewhere else. And that's the honest truth.
Why do you call STARFALLER a so-called hero and say there are no heroes in the Grim Shadows universe?
Look, you need to understand, these guys, the Grim Shadows, they're not heroes. They don't help old ladies across the street or save little kitten cats out the trees. That's not what they do. These guys kill on command. They will burn down your town if ordered to do so. Everything they do is for coin or power. As long as you're paying them, They will be your best buddy. Don't pay them what they're owed. And well, you know the old saying, right? Look around and find out. They are professionals, meaning they won't just walk into your home and kill everybody for no reason. But now, if they get paid to do it, well, you best run. The only true fact on why they are not the bad guys of the stories is that they are fighting things that are far worse than they are morally speaking. This is why I always use the saying in Starfaller that Starfaller is really about killers versus villains. Not heroes versus villains, but killers versus villains. And I think that's pretty accurate.
I have noticed many of your characters have serious flaws. Was this done on purpose, and for what reason? Many heroes, male and female these days, have very few, if any, flaws. Many are made where they can do whatever is required of them. But your characters do have flaws. What message are you giving with being this way?
All my main characters have flaws to make them human and relatable on some level. I'm not going out of my way to make them either seem more human or relatable. That's not the point. The point is to make characters to seem real in the world setting that they inhabit. I could make protagonists who have no flaws, but to what end? Would it move the story along? Maybe. But it would not really be an interesting story, now would it? The tales I write are for the purpose of showing the human condition, the sacrifice people must make every day on how to fix a problem. Sometimes that can mean bringing a warm blanket to your grandmother. Other times it can mean burning down a town that stands in the way of your plans. Everyone is different. People that seek the ability to do anything and everything, they tend to lose more than they gain. In life, there seems to be some invisible balance that goes with the condition of living. And the more you seek to become the ultimate power, it seems that there is a counter mechanism that happens that will cause you to suffer a great deal. Starfaller desired to gain the Eye of Shadows to help him recover his forgotten past and to have a powerful tool to use against his enemies. We can see now how that worked out for him. In this life, you can have whatever it is that you desire, whatever it is you want. But there's a second part to that, which is as long as you're willing to pay the price. And the more you want, the higher the price will be.
What are some of the flaws your characters have?
Starfaller suffers from a flaw I have myself. He believes in strength before anything else, as do I. Many people would say that's a great thing and ask, how is that a flaw? I think you would really have to have that mindset to understand why it is a flaw and not always a good thing for you. It leads to blind spots in both your thinking and your assessment abilities. If, let's say, his old mentor, the dark elf known as Thorn Blackflame, was kidnapped, Starfaller would move the realms to save him. But if he had to sacrifice something that would make him weak, or in some cases just appear weak, that would be a problem. That would be a big problem. Starfaller's thinking would be, well, Black Flame is a powerful mage. He would understand that I can't do this to save him because, that would make me weak. Black Flame, on the other hand, would not agree with that. He would not feel that that was a good thing. So it's a blind side, a weakness, that if known by his enemies, could be used against him. You got to understand, his experience have taught him to always move in his world from a position of strength and never from weakness. it's allowed him to survive things that others have not. And it would never occur to him to give them what they wanted if it would seriously weaken him or his plans. Now, he might tell them, okay, I'll give you this, but there would always be a plan to betray them or to sabotage whatever it is they were trying. He would never just give up something that would make him weak to get something that he wanted. It just wouldn't happen. You got to understand, he's not a hero. Unfortunately, I suffer from the same thing, but the difference is I'm aware of it. It does not impact my ability to write a character who would give something up in that case, but I personally would never do it. Another example would be Titan Starax, the Dwarf Lord from the Voidlands, who's in the book. In the book, we get to see one of his flaws on full display. The dwarf greed curse called Von Deer that he suffers from. Now, he overcomes it, but it almost costs him everything. The character of Cain from the Chronicles of Cain novel, it's a different book, is a whole bag of cats when it comes to flaws. But I think we'll save him for a different time.
My final question is: the void and the creatures that come from seem to play a huge role in all three eras of the GSU. Why is that?
In the GSU, before there was anything, there was the void. Before the founding of the dreaming empire of Dor, before the gods' war, before the sun and the moon, before the first and most powerful lord of law had his mind broken by going into the depths of the void and becoming the fool who created the courts of chaos, there was the void. And in the end of all things, there will be the void. The chief villain of Starfaller Shadowborn is an old one known as Malzaroth, or Malzaroth, the Black Dream or the Unmaker. He is never really directly in the books. He does make a slight appearance, but for the most part, he is talked about and he stays in the shadows. He is an old one, and the old ones were beings from the deepest parts of the void. They were older than the gods, and they went to war with the gods and were barely defeated. In their defeat, they couldn't kill them. The gods couldn't kill them. So what they had to do was they had to put them in a state of slumber. The creatures of the void seek to always enter into the mortal realms so that they can grow there. Think of them kind of like an infection or an infestation. They are known for creating void nests where they can create more of their kinds on the mortal realms, and they seek to infect the mortal realms so that they can absorb them back into the void, cutting them off from the powers of creation. In reading the book, some people might mistake the Eye of Shadows, the artifact, as a void-made artifact, but it is not. It comes from a different realm. The Abyss, also known as the Graveyard of the Gods, the Abyss seeks to absorb life to feed its hunger, while the Void seeks to infect and absorb life. The Void is the eternal enemy. My ideas for the Void date back to my love of H.P. Lovecraft's work. Stories like The Colors Out of Space, At the Mountains of Madness, and others had a huge influence on me. Now, I am aware fully that he was an extreme racist even back in those days, but I still find value in the man's work. With Lovecraft, I have to separate the man from his work. Also, movies like John Carpenter's The Thing, 30 Days of Night, and Hellraiser have also had an impact on me as a writer and creator.
Well, Mr. Rucker, I want to thank you for giving me your time for this interview. I have enjoyed it and think our audience now has a greater understanding of the novel, you and your creative process. Again, thank you so much. I will see you again soon.
Thank you. I must say I've really, really enjoyed this, and I'm sure we will talk again very soon. Thanks again.